Good afternoon, everyone. I declare the meeting open, and would you please be upstanding for the acknowledgement of country and opening prayer by Pastor Paul Crossman, Mittagong Presbyterian Church. Acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on this land we are meeting on and pay my respect to elders both past and present, and also pay that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders present today. I'll hand over to you now, Pastor Paul, for opening the meeting.
Thank you, Lord. We come before you as a community tonight, this evening, and we ask your richest blessing. We ask you to give this council wisdom in making decisions. We ask for rational and erstwhile debate over the crisis and the issues that face us as a council and as a community here in the Southern Highlands. And we ask you to bring sometimes just common sense into those issues so that they can be seen for what they are and decisions can be made on the future. Also, Lord, I want to say thank you for the rain that we have received and pray for more. We desperately need a wet earth, a drenching rain, a rain that'll soak in, a rain that'll bring such a blessing to our Southern Highlands. We ask you for it and we commit it to you. We know that you are a graceful and merciful God. So, Father, we thank you for that in advance. And tonight, let your blessing be upon this meeting and all that transpires in it. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. And before we go any further, I'd just remind everyone that if you turn off your mobile phones, please, or keep them on silent, and we'll ask the General Manager, as this is being live streamed, to read out the rules in relation to that, and also acknowledge the fact that this is being filmed by Channel 7, so that is also being done. Madam General Manager.
This meeting is recorded and live streamed for public viewing via the internet in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, with the recording stored and made available to the public for later viewing. The recording is subject to copyright. Members of the public attending or speaking at this meeting will be recorded and publicly broadcast. By attending this meeting, you voluntarily consent to your attendance and participation being recorded. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be live streamed. Council requests that everyone present is respectful and uses appropriate language. Council does not accept liability for any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Please ensure that all electronic devices, including mobile phones, are switched to silent. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, public recording of this meeting is prohibited without prior authorisation by Council. Council's live streaming of meetings via Facebook is designed to encourage constructive dialogue. We remind users to be digitally responsible and respect their fellow posters. We ask users to keep comments relevant and not to spam or post personal or commercially sensitive information. This includes content that may be defamatory, derogatory, offensive or discriminatory towards council employees, councillors, other persons or organisations. Failure to follow Facebook house rules will result in comments being deleted, and if this behaviour persists, the user will be blocked.
Thank you.
Smith is here. I want to acknowledge you.
Okay, and thank you very much. I note our local member, Mr. Nathaniel Smith, is here, so welcome, Nathaniel.
Mr. Mayor, a procedural question.
Procedural question, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Scandrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move suspension of standing orders so members of the public here who might want to speak to council or ask questions can address us probably for 3 minutes at a time if people want to do that. Does people want to do that?
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Anyway, I have a seconder, I believe.
Councillor Scandrett,
Okay.
would you resume your seat,
I've moved
please?
the motion, Mr Mayor.
Will you resume your seat? It is not permitted. I will deal with the mayoral minute in a minute, thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm
Why is it
asking-
not permitted, Mr
The-
Mayor? Aren't we an open and transparent council? Why can't the people speak to us?
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
I've moved a motion, Mr Mayor.
No,
Deal with
no,
it.
the-
It has a
the-
seconder, I believe.
The motion is
Has a thirder.
disallowed.
Is
The
disallowed.
motion is disallowed.
Please explain why and put it
The
into the minutes.
motion is
On what basis, Mr
disallowed
Mayor?
on the basis that it is not public, for the public meeting to be addressed by members of the
I've
public.
asked for a
unless they
suspension
have
of standing
given-
orders, Mr Mayor.
Then they
A
get-
suspension. You've made a big mess of this so far and you continue to do it.
Thank you, Councillor
Moving a suspension of standing orders so the public, the affected people in particular, can speak to this council. What else are we having this meeting for?
Thank you, Councillor
Oh,
Scandrett.
Mr Mayor, you're a shame.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. There is a mayoral minute in relation 6.1, acknowledgement of RFS Greenwater Creek and Moreton fires. I'll move that formally. There seems to be a little bit of problem with the, and I don't know whether we can get this up any further. That may be better. Is that better? Then I really can't do much about it unless the mic is turned up a bit more. In relation to those who have been affected by the fire and to the condolences to the family and friends of the brigade members, Mr Andrew O'Dwyer and Mr Jeffrey Keaton, who were killed in service to the community. So I'm moving that as a recommendation with and I'm not sure why it wasn't up, but as part of the mayoral minute, but the point 4 that our support and deepest sympathies to those residents who have lost their homes in the bushfires.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And if I may ask for a minute's silence at the end of this, please.
If you just allow me, yeah, that's fair enough, Councillor Turland. I think that's a good suggestion. So, Councillor Turland,
Well,
that's it, or you?
well, yeah, no, look, I also want to add, I mean, look, we know that we've had a devastating time in the last month, but I think what we also need to do is pay homage to our council staff members. I mean, Mark Pepping and Dominic Lucas and Mr Paul worked tirelessly over that period, and yourself as well, to try and actually help the process to eliminate any stress on the people that lost their houses in the northern and the southern end of our Shire. You know, we need to now take homage in where we are today and make sure that we are prepared for the next disaster. We do not have a disaster plan in place yet today. We need to coordinate that quickly. Not after, now it's after the event, we need to get it in place very quickly. But for the Rural Fire Service, the SES, the police and the local Red Cross, they have been tremendous. So you can't deny that they have done everything they could do to support our Shire, which is fantastic. The other issues we'll deal with tonight in relation to the funds, and I think we'll talk about more funds that need to come from the state and feds later on. But as per your mayoral minute, as I said, our council staff members worked very hard with really not a lot of direction because they didn't know what to do. There was no plan in place.
I
So
tell
we
you
need
what,
to
they did
correct
very
that.
well
They
with
did
what
very
happened.
well in a
Would you
tiresome
like to
time.
move that as a point 5?
Okay, love
The
to.
council staff be acknowledged for
Yep.
their contribution. I don't think any singular staff be singled out because there's a whole series of staff that are behind the scenes who are also involved.
Yes, no, I agree with that. But as we know, Dominic was our major player in the emergency centre and leading what he could do as our council engineer. And Mr Pepping also did a lot.
Can we just leave the council staff?
Okay,
I think
I'll leave
that
that to
would
you.
be most appropriate
Okay.
because, and I endorse your sentiments to council staff, and I know Kath Brennan there and Charmaine Cooper and quite a few others. And as I say, if I go, I will miss out, who gave their time over that Christmas period when councils had sort of closed for the year, and then we were hit with this emergency. I think council staff did an extraordinary job. And to the residents of Balmoral who were hit first by that devastating fire, I went down there on the Monday, and there was just a state of shock when we got the bus in there on the Monday afternoon, and it was quite traumatic. But council, I believe, reacted absolutely tremendously, and we got out something like $30,000 in council relief fund, which was very well thought out about 18 years ago by the then Mayor Councillor Phil Yeo, who set it up after the fires. As you may remember, that commenced up behind Mittagong swimming pool and ended up down in Yarrambool in the matter of the afternoon. So that was foresight by a former mayor, and I didn't have to try and raise funds or rob Kitty initially to be able to authorise that every family get $500 fire affected, and any single resident gets $250, to allow them to restock their fridges. It was the day before Christmas, and they'd lost their electricity for 3 or 4 days, and that was why everybody in Balmoral and Buxton who were fire affected in that village received the $500, and I think that was very well received by the community. And it was at that time that council, I believe, reacted in a very positive way. And then what has happened in working with the community, yes, there is always anger, there is always hurt, and there is always frustration. But I believe that the Balmoral residents have come through that very well, and we will be looking forward to working with them and the northern villages in the same manner. And tonight, the distribution of the monies that were given by the federal government will be distributed, as we believe as a council at the time of last week when we went through it, in the best strategic way that councils agreed to, listening to the community. But as I say, 2 deaths in during the fire was tragic, and it was right on the cusp of Wallandilly and Wingecarribee Shire boundaries. So our condolences to the families who were affected, but as I say, I don't know what it's like to lose a home. I hope I never do. And for the next 2 years, the family who wake up, they'll be waking up in a different room, and looking at a different TV screen, in a different lounge room, whatever, because they won't have their own home. And please do not forget where these people are going to be for the next 2 years. And that is, they will continually need our support and continually need our help. And we as a council will do that as much as we can with the funds that are given to us by the federal and state government. And I've been interviewed by Channel 7 this afternoon, and I make that very clear that we need more money untied from the federal and state governments that we can spend straight away to help the fire affected victims. So I know councillors will all want to speak on the grants, and so they should, because a lot of thought and a bit of debate went into allocating these funds. But again, to the residents who've been affected, we will be there, and I know there's a level of frustration, and I ask that we will be, as soon as we get monies that we can help and get contractors on the ground, we will do so. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I stand to support the resolution and item 5 that was brought up by Councillor Turlin. I do note that Council proposes to allocate an amount of $15,000 contribution from the $1 million federal government grant to honour the fallen RFS firefighters Andrew O'Dwyer and Jeffrey Keaton. This amount may be enough, or it may not, Mr Mayor, but Council is planning something to honour these wonderful fire brigade members in conjunction with Wallandilly Shire Council. And no doubt, Mr Mayor, you'll be conducting further investigations and discussions in this regard. So, Mr Mayor, I thank you for that initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, look, I support the Merrill Minute and also what we've heard from fellow councillors, and I don't think there's one councillor here that wouldn't agree with what you've just said with regard to we need more money on the ground now. Councillors, we've heard these promises from state and federal politicians, whatever it takes. Well, here we are. It's been a month now since that fire down there, and, you know, we're getting on with the job. But $1 million doesn't go anywhere near what we need to bring these communities back to be able to help them. So, Mr Mayor, I'd also like to acknowledge your work in this. As Councillor Turlin said, you know, I think you've been out there leading this, and I thought you've led it well. So I'll just say that. I'm very pleased that my predecessor, Phil Yeo, put that money in place so that you could be there on the spot at the time to actually put money in people's hands that had nothing. So I applaud you for that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that most of what you've said is very appropriate. What I find quite extraordinary is that, and I support your mayoral minute for obvious reasons, but I find quite extraordinary it takes to this point to get number 4 in there. The council extends its deepest sympathies to those residents who have lost their homes in the bushfires. My God.
My mistake there, Councillor Halstead, because this was the draft. It should have been vetted.
Sometimes you've got to look at it again because you tend to sometimes miss a word even. But yeah, I support what you've got to say there is, and the effort by, quite frank, the people mentioned. In other words, in the private, you know, the emergency service, they're the ones out there that have done the job. The unbelievable way in which they've managed themselves, and let me tell you, they've been managing themselves. You can forget all about emergency management because when it comes to the real world, and I've been there, let me tell you, the guys on the ground are the ones that are going to work out whether you're going to save your house or try to save it or not. But they've put in an extraordinary effort. So I'll speak later on about the other one. So, but at this stage, I support your mayoral minute.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Whipper. Oh no, sorry, that was Councillor Halstead's light. And for those who are wondering why we're here, there is, for the first time in 50 years, there's going to be some money spent on this building. So we'll be here for the next 4 or 5 months, I think, till the renovations are done. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and isn't that overdue? 50 years. You've been here 25 of that. Look, this is well worth supporting this mayoral minute today, and I share Councillor Halstead's comments that the first draft should have, in fact, led with that as a key point, that we reflect on the residents who have suffered loss in here, particularly those who have lost their homes. There's a lot of residents who have suffered loss, and that'll come to that in the next item, because they've been impacted by the effects of these fires and the resulting lack of visitations or just local expenditure down here. But I look forward to focusing in on that idea to commemorate the service of those that have lost their lives in this shire, and I guess we'll be working with Wallandilly on that.
We will. Just on that, Councillor Scandrett, and thank you for raising it again. We met with Wallandilly's Mayor and GM this morning, or Executive Officer, I'm not sure the...
Chief Executive.
Yes, Chief Executive Officer, and that was discussed. The Wallandilly were in one way a little bit more fortunate than us. They lost 15 homes and they have received the $1 million grant, and with what they've been able to do with that grant in that fire affected area is going to be a lot more than what we can do with ours, because we have 6 communities and 4 localities that we have to try and address. So they will be looking for council to co-op with them into doing something in Buxton as a memorial to the residents. I think their idea is a fire engine and whatever, and that will be later on. But also the fact that we will be having a acknowledgement to our services, people who served, all our volunteers, RFS, police, Red Cross, the people who pumped out 400 meals a day out of the Mittagong RSL, who did that day in and day out, and even the other day they did 200. So that will be done when the fire situation has been completed, and we are back to hopefully a little bit more of a normal community, which we will have to still provide all the services that council do and still deal with the Section 44, which we are still under. We are still under a Section 44. The fires have not gone away. Is that you, Councillor Whipper?
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, I rise to support the motion, the recommendation, and I think it's the appropriate time just to acknowledge the hardship faced by our community. Times like this bring out the best and the worst in people, and I've seen the community come together. Anybody that's driven through those fire-affected areas would just have to be flabbergasted. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You know, and how that impacts on people's lives. Our wildlife, the suffering, the loss of environment, that habitat, it goes on. And I have no doubt that the healing process will take a long time. One of the things that really did come across strongly to me, though, is this sense of community and how everybody pulls together so quickly and empathises and understands and connects. I don't think there's anybody in this room, and that includes the councillors around the table, that wouldn't know somebody that's affected very, very heavily by the fires that we still are experiencing. So I think I'd just like the community to remember that we are part of the community. We are here. We do feel your pain. We do feel your suffering, and to the best of our ability, we extend our assistance. We're working very difficultly. We did meet with local government in New South Wales today. It's quite clear that we're waiting for some decisions to come down from on high, from the state and federal governments. Hopefully they'll come on board, and we will have more resources to actually invest and contribute to assist with that healing process in the community. Unfortunately, this is a community, our life is governed largely by dollars and cents, but there's so many other ways that really are important in terms of connecting with community. A lot of those can't be measured in mere dollar and cent figures. It's what we do to support each other. And although there is obviously hurt and hardship out there, I just wanted to let the community know that we are there, we are listening, and that we do seriously want to do the best we can with the resources we've got available. So thank you for the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper, and eloquently said, sir. If there's no other comments, then I'll ask you all be upstanding for a minute's silence. Thank you very much. Okay, we have before us we have to put the mayoral minute as a motion, which I haven't done. Can I put that? All in favour? Those against, carried. We move on to public forum. Ms Sarah Hasslinger would like to address council in relation to the following motion. If you come forward. Nick.
Stand on
Oh, right.
voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got to stand. You've got to stand him up there.
Oh, thanks. First, I would like to acknowledge all of those people in my community who have lost their homes, property, lives, animal, and any other loss that you have suffered as a result of these bushfires. I want to acknowledge you first. I then want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, and I want to say I'm very sorry for the practices that we continue that have caused this problem. I then acknowledge the elected officials, the Mayor and the councillors and the council administration. And it is critical that we acknowledge it in that order of priority. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to say in my 3 minutes. As many of you in this room have read, I've been writing on Facebook for some weeks now. We lost our home in Exeter, and I decided that it was critical that I reach out to my community and we be talking to each other as we go through what will probably be one of the most traumatic events of our lives as a whole community. It will take many years for us to recover. I also want to acknowledge, as a community, the extraordinary care that has come forth from community members to all of us who have suffered loss. It has been incredible. But might I say that that is no reflection on the care or kindness that has come from council. As a person who has lost their home, who is now homeless, I do not feel the care or kindness of this council. I do not feel that in the words that have been spoken or the actions that have been taken. I implore you as a council to consider the impact of your decisions on your community. We are in pain. We are in trauma. We are in deep, deep stress. And you are making decisions still. Even today, I stand here and discover you're about to spend $9.6 million on a building that's not housing anyone. I am saddened, I'm horrified, and I'm devastated for our community if this council does not take the opportunity now, today, to start to change the decisions and the thinking right now. Look to those who have suffered loss. Support us. I understand there is a motion forward for all fees relating to each of us who have to rebuild to be waived. I'm not asking you to apply federal grants to pay yourselves for that. I'm asking you to follow the example of Blue Mountain Council, Shoalhaven Council, Bega Valley Council. Waive the fees. It is time for leaders of this community to understand that care and kindness is not an ideal, It is not a feeling, it is an action. It is a visible action that we need to see, and we need to see it today. That is my call to action, councillors.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Turland. We move on to 7.1, Greenwater and Moreton fires. 7.1, Councillor Turland.
I'll move the motion.
You're moving the recommendation.
Recommendation that I'd like to debate some of the changes, which is section J, and that's the rate relief on the properties.
You're moving with the variation to which?
Section J.
Yes, but
And
what
I'll
are you
talk to
moving?
that in a minute to see if I've got council support. We need a seconder first, so then we'll talk about... We need a seconder for the recommendation. Okay, I'll make the amendment first. And I'll put this
Well,
to...
it's not amendment, it'll be the motion.
It'll be the motion with... That's correct.
Yeah, so whatever you move will be the motion. We do not have a motion.
I understand.
So
Okay.
whatever you move will be the motion.
Okay, I get that. So it's in relation to section J. And I'll put this to you and the community. This is $1 million we're getting from the state government. And what we've got is $300,000 going in for rate relief. That hasn't cost the council anything then. They're getting $1 million off the government and they're putting it back in our pocket. It hasn't cost you. Over 30,000 ratepayers in this Shire can afford to pay a small amount of money.
Councillor Turlin, please. You're
Okay,
addressing
I'll go
the
back
chair,
again.
not the audience.
Just a point of order.
Point of order?
Are we debating the issue? Are we...
Well,
Listen,
he's moved...
I'm moving
he's
the
moved-
motion that the
he's moved the motion.
$300,000 goes back into on-the-ground community use, not for the back pockets of the council to keep their budget in place. That is my motion, section J.
So you're moving section J.
Goes
You're
back
mo-
into
No,
on-ground...
no, hang on. I don't understand. It has to be worded up there. It has to be worded so it is, everybody is aware. It's a motion. So your motion is?
that the $300,000 be diverted from rate relief to work on the ground.
Okay. So the 300,000 be excluded.
Still in it.
And
just
that
change
it be reworded to works on ground.
on the ground that could be advised from the community or by councillors or council staff.
No. It's a motion. So
Okay.
you can't. It has to be
I
for
understand
works on the ground.
On the ground.
Right.
If you wanted to
Full
dictate
stop.
who actually nominates that work,
Well,
the next part of it.
then that should be part of it in consultation with the community.
which is what I'm trying to get to, which is...
Okay, then that is the word. As we know, the wording is so important.
Okay. You just mentioned that, I'm happy with that.
Okay, so the 300,000 be excluded from the recommendation and be used for works on the ground in consultation with the community.
Yes.
No, that is Councillor Turlin's motion.
All you need to do...
No, that's what he wants.
No, the rate, we wear the rate relief as
Have we got a
council
second of
orders.
this?
Excuse me, please.
May I make a comment?
Well,
All
microphone.
we need to do is
Turn your
change
light on.
J, just as it has been changed, and we
Can't
don't
hear
need to
you,
do
Madam GM.
anything else. All we need to do is change J just the way it's been changed. We don't need to put any other extra wording in. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Good. Then that simplifies it.
That's right, but there's been a question asked,
Have we got a seconder?
and the overall...
Okay, well, okay, Councillor Turland,
But there was a question.
Councillor Turlin, no, I take your point. Do you have a seconder for your
And I want to
motion?
move an amendment, Mr. Mayor.
No, it's not an amendment. You have to have a motion before you're going to move an amendment.
I
Okay,
wanna
so
move a
the motion is moved by Councillor Turlin, seconded by Councillor Halstead. Oh, Councillor Whipper. Okay,
Uh-oh.
that J be removed,
Just as it is now.
just as it is now. Right. Councillor, you're going to move an amendment, Councillor Scandrett?
Certainly am, Mr. Mayor.
No, his light is on. Your
Mr. Mayor,
amendment?
I
Your amendment?
recognise Councillor Halstead is going to move an amendment, which I'll be happy to incorporate in this if he so wishes. However, I don't agree with Councillor
No,
Turner's.
I want your amendment, please.
Well, you gave
Thank
Councillor
you.
Turner 5 minutes. I can at least get 30 seconds out of you. Okay. I mean, okay, point of order. So I'm moving the motion as we see it on the screen with the following changes. I'll just wait for that to be put up so people are clear on what I'm proposing. Okay, the first point, Mr. Mayor, I'm leaving J as it was in the original business paper, $300,000 rate relief for those people who have lost their homes, of which there are about 60 at this point, and there are a number.
No, just please
in this
read your...
room. Please give me a fair
No,
run.
Councillor,
Your bias is obvious.
Oh, Councillor Scandrett,
Second, no, you
have
gave
to
Councillor
give
Turlin
your
5
motion.
minutes to spray.
The same thing
right?
applied to Councillor Turlin. You've got to read your motion.
Yes, 5 minutes. M, I want to waive late fees, late rate fees from reserves and also the DA fees. Now, I estimate the DA fees to be as much...
No, that's what you... That's
Just, I need to ask a procedural question.
Okay,
Mr. Mooney,
what's the procedural
I estimate
question?
the waiving of DA fees could be as much as 600,000 for the approximate 60 homes. Am I in the right space with that, Mr. Mooney? Okay. Okay, all right.
An
Well, I'll
estimate.
just leave
And
it.
I will just point out, it's an estimate, councillor.
Thank you. I'll put estimate behind it. And to make it clear, I'll make N, okay, waive late rate fees and associated interest charges. I know we have a hardship policy, Mr. Mayor. I want a specific direction on this. Now,
Please
waive
don't speak
late
to it until
N.
you move it.
N,
Hang on, we're trying to catch up.
M was, right, to waive the DA fee and associated fees for the people who have lost their homes. N is to waive late rate fees and interest charges and the like, and collection charges, Mr. Mayor, right? I mean, we're going to be the unthinking, uncaring council?
No, just move your recommendation.
In there. Now, I want to put a sub-point into the $100,000 that's proposed for flora and fauna, and I hope I'll get support for this, that council would like to donate the sum of $10,000 towards animal rescue in that space. In particular, I'd like to see...
No, not that you would like. Please word it.
The council donate, all right, $10,000 to animal care via Wombat Care at Bundanoon. And I might point out...
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Well, you can argue that if you like. I mean, if you want me to put
No,
in
but
koalas, we'll put 20 grand.
Councillor Scandrett, is that your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that are the main points, though I will add O.
No,
O.
Okay, we have an O.
O, that council consider the requests from the Balmoral Village Association in relation to the park and lands down there, and I know that...
No.
Okay.
No.
As part of this, and that
hang on, wait a minute, please. Can we get
Okay.
that written down?
Thank you.
Please, that number 5, that
That was
council
number O.
consider. O. O.
Oh, we're trying to...
Councillor Scandrett is moving this as number O. The council what?
The council consider the requests from the Balmoral Association that you all have in front of you.
No, not that we have in front of us, that you
The request,
consider
as
the
per
request.
the email of from the president of the Balmoral Association. Emails, plural.
Okay, no, councillor...
haven't finished.
You haven't finished yet?
No.
Okay, keep going.
Point P.
We're up to P. There's 25
council-
letters in the alphabet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the running commentary.
Thank
I'm
you.
here for the serious thing for our community, not for the grandstanding. Okay. And point P is that council consider the requests from the Winslow community as per the email dated today from David Brueggemann, who has been very articulate in...
The council consider the email from David Brueggemann.
Which particularly talks about...
No, we're not into debate, we're into writing your motion.
Which particularly, Brueggemann, that's right, which particularly points out the dangers from roadside trees and vegetation that has been bushfire affected or is vulnerable. Thank you. I'm happy with that, Mr.
Now,
Mayor.
do you have a seconder?
Well, let's see if I do, Mr. Mayor. And I will say that number...
Oh, hang on, you have. If you go to your amendment, thank you, Madam General Manager. If you go back to M, what's that? M is waive what? Development
Late rate.
application fees?
Yes. And Councillor Houston.
Who for? For anybody?
Thank you for people who have lost their property, their homes.
For people who have lost their homes.
Homes.
Not sheds or anything else, just homes.
Well, it's the 60 people you spoke about at the beginning, Mr. Mayor, so you qualified.
No, not everybody lost their homes, but there was a lot of property lost.
I think there were 60 homes approximately lost.
Yes,
yet to be confirmed with
but
one being
not
closed.
everybody lost their homes who were fire impacted.
Well, I'm glad to see your support on this, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Halstead, I invite you to amend that item about waiving the DA fees and so on, or do you want to add to it?
You have to get a mover, you have to get
Do
somebody...
that then, thank you,
You have to get a seconder.
I'll take that out if you want to run the
No,
rules.
Councillor Scandrett, you are after a seconder
Yes,
for
have I
your
got a seconder?
amendment.
For debate even. For
Thank
debate.
you,
Have I got
Councillor
a seconder
Scandrett.
for
Do you
debate?
have a seconder?
People in the
No,
audience? No,
your motion amendment
Unbelievable.
lapsed for a want of a seconder. Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, well, I'm going to move an amendment now. It was going to be a foreshadow one if that one had got the Guernsey.
Okay, we have a motion, so it will now be
It's right
an
back
amendment.
to the original one.
Yep.
That was amended by Councillor Turland.
Yep.
Which was N, I think. And the following is to occur to that. The removal of 4, which is... I won't go into the debate, but I'm certainly going to go into it when we start debating. But at the moment,
Let's get
I'll
the...
rip right into number 4. But plus the new number 4 and 5, which is as per an email I sent to every councillor a few days ago. And so the new 4 would become that development application fees not be charged for new, in brackets, replacement, homes and businesses that were burned down in the recent bushfires within the Wingecarribee Shire. And the next one, 5, that development applications for new, in brackets, replacement again, homes and businesses that were burned down in the recent bushfires be processed within 10 working days. Now, I won't go into any of that debate. Totally doable. I'm not going to go into that debate yet, but I will.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Sure.
Thanks.
Councillor Scandrett. Now, we have a motion as Councillor Turland. And, all right, and then we have Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move
It will be a foreshadowed motion?
I'm moving a foreshadowed amendment.
No, you can't. All you have to do is to the chair is that you are giving notice of a foreshadowed motion.
Amendment.
Right. So that will sit there, and so everybody's aware what will happen. The two items will be debated. There will be a vote taken on both items. The item that is defeated allows then Councillor Nelson to bring forward his aforeshadowed motion. So I want a speaker to the Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, I'll speak against the motion.
No,
Okay.
that's right. It is protocol that the mover speaks first. Councillor Turl.
Now, if with the seconders, it is on, the seconders' approval, what Councillor Halstead has put in the amendment, I'd like to put in the motion, and then I'll talk to the motion. So everything that Councillor Halstead has inserted about DAs, I thought we were going to do this later.
Okay, wait, we'll...
But it's now locked into the system now, so we'll deal with it now.
Okay, so which are you going to accept in the motion?
Both, 4 and 5, to be brought back into the motion that I moved in relation to works on the ground instead. And then I will talk to that.
Now, for that to be done, Councillor Whipper, who was the seconder, has to support that.
For debate.
I'll second it and I'll listen to the debate.
Okay, so let's get the wording up so everybody in the room knows exactly what the motion is.
That's correct. Jay's correct as I've got it in the recommendation of the motion at the moment. And then I'll talk to that in a minute.
Mr Mayor, then, as you know, there's no need for my amendment.
No, that's right.
Because he's now got a...
That's right. You have to withdraw
But don't forget where it came from.
That's you have to withdraw.
Always.
You have to withdraw your amendment.
I will draw it.
You'll withdraw the amendment. The seconder of the amendment. Who was the seconder of the amendment? Councillor Scandrett, you're happy to withdraw?
Yes.
So we now have a motion which is up on the board, moved by Councillor Turland and seconded by Councillor Whipper. Right, now Councillor Nelson, seeing that's been withdrawn, you can now bring your amendment forward.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment which is the recommendation as printed in the business paper on 7.1, which goes 1, 2, 3 and down to JKL, with number 4, which reads, following consultation with other New South Wales councils and the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, a detailed report be brought back to Council at its meeting of 12 February 2020 outlining relief options for development applications and associated fees for residents who have lost their dwelling houses in the 1919-20 bushfire locations.
Seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. So we have the motion and the amendment. The amendment as is printed on the business paper with the addition of 4. That was circulated just as the meeting commenced. Councillor McLaughlin, you can just turn that off,
Okay.
and it goes back to Councillor Turland. Councillor Turland.
Well, I've not seen that circulation. Anyway, so be it. Now let me go back a little bit. The $1 million from the federal government is what we're here to speak about today. That's what it's all about. And now we've dragged on to other issues because of the media has been involved, and that's fine. But if you look at the $1 million for Wallandilly, at 16 houses, it's $66,000 per house. If you look at Wingecarribee now, we actually found out how many today, only 60 to 65 houses. It's only $15,000 out of the federal grant. $2 billion has been promised, and what we've got is $60 million to councils, and it's out of whack. The South Coast has copped a hiding, 500, 600 houses. They get $1 million each. It's ridiculous.
Councillor Turland.
Absolutely
please.
ridiculous. Now, as for the $10,000 fees, what I've tried to put up there is that what you've got is this council has contributed in water and other bits of times and overtime and all those bits and pieces. But this is federal money to be given to the people, not for us to be putting it back in our budget to make it stack up. Every one of these householders, every one of the householders here that haven't been affected can afford to wear that cost for 1 or 2 years. That money needs to be spent on the ground. That's what it was put there for, not for us to put back in our coffers. You know, we're about $2 to $3 million down ourselves, our Shire, from what we put in. We know Wallandilly today said they've spent $1.7 million already. I reckon we're probably 2 to 3 million, probably more like 3, of stuff that can't be quantified yet. But this money wasn't given to us to put in our back pocket again to keep our budget good. That wasn't what it was for. And as for the DA fees, they should be written off, because on the 22nd of this month we had a briefing session and we were told that the state government was going to bring forward an opportunity for the government to wear those costs. But we've heard nothing. Nothing. It's ridiculous. And even today, the $75,000 that we've actually put towards to help tourism in the area, which is jobs and employment and so on, we're now told by Minister Ayres there's no money. We went for dollar, and we're told today there is no money. But we're happy to spend $2 billion on sports stadiums in Sydney, and there's no money for the bush.
Councillor Turner.
It has to stop. It has to stop. I don't think the state government and the Premier understands how tough it is down in the South Coast, let alone here. It's amazing. If you've gone through Wingecarribee and Ballinot, which I have, it's devastating. And we need to step up. Now, if it means our budget is busted, I don't care. And if it's the general public that is happy to actually offset those costs, even by $20 over a year, that would be a nice suggestion. But to just say this $1 million is going to go back into the council machine, that's not right. It's got to go back to the public, and the public need their say. We've had our 2 meetings, and it was interesting, in the public meetings, in Balmoral and Bundanoon, the question was asked about the DA fees, and what was told back to us?
Thank you,
It's
Councillor
not our
Turlin.
policy. Change the policy.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, very passionate from Councillor Turland, and you know, I acknowledge your thoughts on this, but with respect, I'd say it's not going back into council coffers. We had a meeting last week. We were all on the same page, Councillor, where we sat down and decided where we would put this money to work. And, where were you, Councillor? Playing on Facebook, were you? Come on.
Councillor...
So basically,
Councillor
Mr Mayor...
McLaughlin has the floor and the right for silence.
we looked... OK, we've worked very hard with Wallandilly Shire, $50,000 for those people that can use the facility down there so they don't have to bring their destroyed material to our waste facility. So there's money going out of the Shire. There's money going for all the things we want to do. We want to replace the parks. We want to bring people back in their community. We want to see people get their lives back, as you've said. So, look, I mean, if you want to put a levy, Councillor, on, that'd be a different thing. If you want to say there's been an extraordinary levy on all the ratepayers so we don't undermine our budget, I'd go for it. Because I'm not grandstanding here today because I'm not running for council again at the next election. Good. So basically, I'm going to be honest here, just to say...
We're talking about the government grant.
No, there's not a point of
We're
order.
talking about
That
a
is not a
federal-
point of order, but I will ask Councillor McLaughlin to make sure that all councillors address the motion. Councillor address the motion,
Okay.
and that accords not just Councillor McLaughlin, but all councillors.
Okay.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Well, look, the motion is basically the same, apart from we are, I think, a generous council by saying rate relief for those people that have lost their house for 2 years. I mean, That's, I think, that, well, what do we do to... My understanding is, if you've got a house insured, Mr Mayor, if it's burnt down, your insurance covers your DAs and all that. So basically what we're doing is we're allowing a get out of free jail to a card to the insurance company. Now so basically, well, believe it or not, I think my house is insured where that is the case. So anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson, now you're speaking to your amendment.
Look, Mr Mayor, I'd like to speak to the amendment and against the motion. Look, as it was pointed out, we did meet with residents at the north and the south to talk to them about what they wanted. We then had a meeting of all the councillors to discuss what the residents wanted, and we came up with these issues. Now, now all of us weren't all in favour, and we took a few votes here and there, but the majority of the councillors have gone with these items. Now, Councillor Halstead sent through an item about the DA fees, rightly so, and that's reflected in item 4. I'd like to consider DA refunds at a later stage, which will be at the next council meeting, Mr Mayor, and I prefer to consider them in the light of a full report from staff so that all the facts are known. For instance, the payment of DA fees must be made to council for the DA to actually be compliant.
No, excuse me, please.
And Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Nelson, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Nelson is referring to the official policy of council's DA application forms.
No, that's
like it or
legislation.
not, there is a DA that has to be followed. Councillor Nelson.
That's legislation, not our legislation. Look, Mr Mayor, DA fees are made up of 3 components. One of the components is the long service leave levy that must be paid to the state government. As I speak, I believe that this is being reviewed by the New South Wales government. Insurance companies, or the one I spoke to, pay DA fees and provide 52 weeks relief for the residents. We may also need legal advice on whether we can waive DA fees or not. We may need the insurance company to guarantee that the insurance for the residents will be there for them when they want to rebuild. The Department of Planning are currently also having discussions in regard to DA fees. So once this information is provided to councillors on the 13th of February, we'll be in a better position, Mr Mayor, to evaluate DA fee relief, particularly in the light of council's rate relief, and which is the 300,000. So, Mr Mayor, I'm just asking that the councillors wait 2 weeks, and we'll have we may have the number of DAs from the fire-affected residents, because as Councillor Turlin said, at 60, 65, we're not sure yet, and we still haven't got through the fire season, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Halstead.
I've heard it all now, but this is handed out this afternoon, just as we sat down, the number 4, in red. It was no doubt concocted today. Don't pull me up, because that's a very legitimate word. Concocted today, number 4, to placate certain people, no doubt staff. That's my opinion anyway. I don't know. But, you know, my God, you would all be aware of the fact that I wrote to the Premier on the 13th of January this year, because you're all told about it. I didn't give you a copy of it, and I still won't give you a copy of it, because it's to her, not this council. So the 13th of January I wrote to the Premier and said there's all sorts of issues here, not the least of which is DA fees and turnaround times. But certainly the turnaround time was the thing that really worried me, because people need to be able to get in. And I still hold very clearly, Mr Mayor, that any planner worth his salt can process in 10 days. Now, we'll no doubt get a scream from the planners at some stage, but they obviously have to think, my God, outside the square. How do you do that? Very easily, because you condition it appropriately. BCA and all the rest of the things, references to the bushfire and all the rest of it. You can do it. Now, I haven't had a response from the Premier, but I think we might have the local member here. He's one of the ones I didn't send it to, because I sent it to four ministers as well as the Premier. No response from anyone. But am I surprised? No, because it's January, always January, and they'd have been flat out doing other things. But I'm really annoyed about this whole damn thing, because there's absolutely no doubt that DA fees should be waived, and that's why I stuck with the original 4 and 5, not the concocted one, which has obviously been done to placate staff. That's in my opinion. My God. So I send out that to you last, whatever day it was, Tuesday the 28th, so it's only this week. Those two. So that was my intention. So you all full well knew what I was going to do today. You'll be aware that I gave notice of my intention to write to the Premier of New South Wales, and that was done at a meeting, an information session. I did indeed make that submission, which I've now just confirmed with you, and I want to very clearly wrote in there about the 10-day turnaround. The state government has the power to legislate in this matter and should do it without delay, quite frank, and that's embodied in the letter to the Premier. And there's 2 or 3 ways they can do that, and I do know what I'm talking about from a legislation point of view, Councillor Nelson. You may think otherwise, but I'm very concerned about this, and it can happen. And here's an example of where the state government put its money where its mouth is, probably through our local member might be prepared to do something better, and actually do something that creates legislation that forces local government to do this, right across the state, quite frankly, and certainly to start with the bushfire affected councils. It's a great concern to me that the Wingecarribee Shire Council intends to gouge development applications fees from persons whose homes and or businesses have been burnt down. I do not want my name associated with any statements made by anybody, and I think, I'm not going to mention you, but I've mentioned certain people. I do not want anyone to talk on my behalf.
Thank you, Councillor.
Probably don't need to say any more.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Markwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have $100,000 here, and that's really the issue what we're talking about here. I'm not too concerned about $50,000 here or there, to be quite honest. What I'm concerned about is things that's been touched upon by Councillor Turland and Councillor Halstead. The $100,000, we shouldn't be arguing about that. We should be arguing the amount is absolute rubbish. And I think our state and federal governments have let us down here. They are the ones who can give us the legislation. They're the ones who can give us money in the emergency sense we can apply. We are hamstrung until they act. So it's fine to bicker about 50,000 or 100,000 here and there. It doesn't make a huge difference. We need $2 or $3 million, and we need it very soon.
Correct.
And that's really what we should be focusing on. I'm pleased to see the state member here. He needs to take a clear message back that this Shire and many other Shires think it is despicable that the federal and state government have not delivered in this emergency. I will actually put a kick into this. You may be aware that the state government has cut back funding in the budget for tourism last year, for the federal national parks and wildlife, and the state basically for the RFS services. That is totally unacceptable. We are being parked and squeezed into a corner, and basically by our federal and state governments. I deplore that. I'll leave it at that. I'll vote accordingly on the after we finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Markwood. Councillor Whipper.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Look, I seconded the motion by Councillor Turland. I have listened to the debate from Councillor Nelson in relation to the amendment as well. And look, it'd be easy to stand up here and win favour and get applause and say, I'll give everybody everything. That's the case. It can be done very easily. The decision for us is, how do we expend the community's money in a practical way and in a way that is beneficial. Now, we all feel, as I said, for the community. So what we need to do is take stock of the resources we've got. My concern with the original motion is that undoubtedly the insurance industry have a responsibility. You and I and every member of this community who has insurance pays premiums for a purpose. Now, we pay emergency services levy as well. Each member of this community puts into that. So if we expend this money, it could be money that could be used on other things that have been affected by fires. Exactly. So it's a dilemma for me. Now, I do feel, and I think, yes, we could waive those fees. So I'm going to listen to the continuing debate. But it's not easy to stand here and say what you think and what you really feel. This is not an attack on anybody. Or is it to create friction? We've got to work together. The sad thing, like Councillor Markwood said, is that the government have given $1 million. Whether you've lost 10 houses, 2 houses, 5 houses, 100 houses, there's $1 million. It's like proverbially throwing a bone into the circle and everybody's fighting over it. And it's really, these are pittances of money that we're talking about. There's no real value in any of this. So it's a shame that we've actually digressed to a state where we're bickering over a few lousy dollars. I think the state government and the federal government need to listen on the ground to the need for more injection of funds. We've heard it today from Local Government New South Wales. We were under the impression that that money would be coming forward sooner than this, and that we could then tally and dish out that money accordingly. But what we're doing is we've got this little piece of meat and we're cutting it up into the smallest possible proportions, and basically it's probably not going to do a lot of good overall anyway. So we're trying to do the best we can. That's one of the reasons I honestly believe the insurance industry need to honour those contracts that they enter into with the community. As simple as that. Now, if there's some way that we could recoup the money that we invest into those DA fees from the insurance industry and then reallocate that money back into those fire-affected communities for other things, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. And I don't want to seem, sort of stingy, but I'll wait and I'll listen to the rest of the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Scandrett. Oh, Councillor Whipper.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to be unambiguous on this. Very clear. Very clear, everyone. It's not just the $1 million. It's about looking after our affected community. And the community overall has told me, Mr. Mayor, in all the trips I've made, all out to the villages and meetings with affected people and associations and so on, that they support helping the people who've lost their homes. So the $600,000 that is now in number 4 should be expensed from our general reserves. Our general reserves are $182 million.
Councillor Scandrett, you cannot say that without qualifying the amount of monies where and what is possible for council to
I will, if you let
achieve.
me.
Councillor
In my
Scandrett.
opinion, approximately 10% of that is uncommitted to Section 94 plans for infrastructure building and so on for developments and like. So there's probably about 20 million floating out there. So out of that 600 could go to simply supporting our community. 2, in the motion that I didn't get a seconder for, and that's a really shameful sort of situation, I'm reminded often, Mr. Mayor, that you talked about ineptitude. Well, here we were. You had an opportunity to say, yeah, let's look after the community. But like all the media you've done in these recent weeks, you failed. Failed. Anyway, I have said that we should move that 600. So item 4, and I'm going to ask the timekeeper to stop the clock here. I have to ask a question of our General Manager. If I could have the time. If that is an item.
You're in debate, you don't.
Okay, well, I'll just mention it and it can be answered after. Any funds coming from our our own reserves have to be approved by the Finance Committee, Mr Mayor. So the point 4 there that I support with Councillor Halstead, and any costs in terms of expediting DA processing in point 5 might have to go to the Finance Committee? I'm not sure. Yes, you're saying. Okay, so we need to consider that, everyone, that it's got another hoop to jump through. In terms of looking after our wildlife, I've suggested, and I again say to you, Councillor Turland and Councillor Whipper, that you could allocate 10 grand of that 100 grand to Wombat Care Bundanoon, who have been out there feeding all types of wildlife, and they've been doing that in conjunction with community, men's sheds, and our young Shire Person of the Year, Caitlin Gallagher, who received that Citizen of the Year award on Australia Day. I don't know what you think of that, Councillor Turland. Will you take that on board? Are you happy to put 10 grand in there?
Councillor Scandrett.
It was agreed that this should go through the Environment Committee.
Yes.
I think rather than single out any good.
Thank you, Councillor.
All right, be it on the record that I said that the Wombat Care people were absolutely screaming for support in terms of feed and infrastructure, Councillor. And well, it might take. When's the committee?
Councillor Scandrett.
When's the committee meeting next? And how come why don't we give some direction to this? We spoke today with the President of the Local Government Association about having
Thank you,
a
Councillor
forum with Wallandilly.
Thank you.
Commend that to everyone.
Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I rise to support the amendment. Look, in my view, point 4 of the amendment is both reasonable and sensible at this time. It is possible at the federal, still possible at the federal and or the state government will move on this matter of DAs. We don't know. Also, insurance has been mentioned. No one here today has been able to clarify whether any insurance covers even part of new DAs after fire damage. We're still in recovery. There are fires still burning. At a briefing session last week, we discussed all these matters from A to L in this document, in the recommendation, and it was an overwhelming consensus this is the way we would go. But we also discussed DAs, and they were definitely going to be discussed in the future when we got further into finding out the number of homes and properties that were lost. Yeah. We definitely discussed that at that time. We can certainly wait 2 weeks. And it's been mentioned many times here, we are compassionate, for God's sake, and I honestly believe what the outcome of in 2 weeks, I'm sure, without having the knowledge, 100% of the community will be well satisfied with the outcome. Thank you. Thank
you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Scandrett, you are using a meeting procedure. This could go right around the table again.
That's fine, Mr Mayor.
I don't think...
We have until 7:30, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Are you denying the right to speak?
You have the right to speak, and I can't deny that.
Point of order on that, Mr Mayor, before you start the clock.
Councillor,
no, we don't need personal comments across the chamber like that.
Thank you, Councillor.
I mean, the Chardonnay socialist here, who owns multiple houses in this Shire, multiple house owner, and you've got a vested interest, haven't you? Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
Give me a break.
Councillor Scandrett.
Oh, no wonder you want to support the insurance companies.
Councillor Scandrett.
Okay, I'll start the clock now, Mr Mayor.
No, you won't. The clock has started.
Oh, I see. Shut me down.
You won't. You are not
Mr Mayor, the insurance
meeting.
companies, if you go and look at IAG's general policy out there, they have a number of levels. The top level includes paying fees, council fees and the like. Any of the other levels, and people who own multiple houses would probably know this, I don't.
Councillor
I don't. I own one residential property. Anyway, and it's the one I live in. Right, I don't have rent income from others. Anyway, all that. No, truly. No big. Go on, you go on. Good old Labor. Good old Labor. Anyway, go on. So, the insurance companies, for example, NRMA, which is a for-profit company owned by IAG these days, They have 3 or 4 options there. Only the top option pays your fees. In fact, unless you're a landlord, they don't pay your carpet replacement either in a residential property. So when we're talking about supporting the 60 people who have lost their homes, Mr Mayor, the 60 people who have lost their homes, every penny is going to count. In that session last week, we identified there's going to be a massive shortfall likely for most people because the increased cost of building replacement homes combined with new regulations and bushfire and BAL and all of that. So yes, we need to pay this DA and associated fees from our general reserve, and if that has to go to a finance committee, so be it. So be it. Thank you. The tape will show it. The tape will show it. Fantastic. I'm glad you're here today instead of being sailing up in the Whitsundays or running around Alaska. Anyway, honestly, the Minister for Holidays. The Minister for Holidays. 25% you've missed of these meetings. Yes, Mr Mayor.
Will you resume your seat?
I haven't finished, Mr Mayor.
You have finished, Councillor Scandrett.
I'll finish, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Scandrett.
Why?
Will you resume your chair?
Name why. Give me the reason.
You are...
Give me the reason, Mr Mayor.
You are leading the debate for turning it into a debate.
I'll deal with matters on this sheet now, Mr Mayor. I'll deal with matters, thank you. Okay, so insurance, I've covered there. Look, the villagers and the people from Wingelow and from Balmoral are here today. How are we going to help them? Wingelow hasn't got any access to tip fees. Bargo has, everyone. 50 grand in here. Why aren't we looking after Wingelow and the southern villages, Bundanoon, Penrose, Wingelow? We're not at this point. We've talked, councillors, about having paddock burning of green waste and the like. This is not about this. It's about burnt, damaged material and helping that. State government's waived the rate impost in that area, the waste levy, but we are not helping the people down there. I look to you, Councillor Turlin, and the seconder, to amend that, and if we have to match that 50 grand with 50 grand for the southern villages, so be it. Let it come from the general reserve, of which there's, say, 20 million. And I also want to mention small business, which is lost in here. We were planning to
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Look, before I do my comment, the facts and fiction that Councillor Scandrett has espoused...
No, you can't say it, Mr Mayor.
The fact is, Councillor Scandrett, we do not have a rubbish tip. We have a transfer station called the RRC. The
Shame.
Will you turn off your light?
No,
please?
I won't, because you're defaming me.
Councillor
Keep going,
Scandrett.
Mr Mayor. Keep going.
Councillor Scandrett.
I didn't say a tip.
Will you turn off? You will be rejected for disorderly conduct if you carry on.
Well, only for the community, Mr Mayor.
Oh, Councillor Scandrett.
Shame, Mr Mayor. You brought this council into disrepute.
Turn off.
No, not working.
Now, if you don't, Councillor Scandrett, you're playing to the audience, you're playing for grandstanding, and that is just out of it. No, thank you. I'd just like to point a few things. I'll be speaking to the amendment. I think that at this stage, if you are aware that we pay on a long service amount, the average levy is $2,625 to be paid to the state government. Now, I'm looking at our local member, and if we, and I do support the fact that DAs, if we can, we do not charge in any way, shape or form. However, if the insurance policy covers the DA lodgement fees, then I agree with Councillor Whipper, then that is up to the insurance company to pay, not for us to subsidise the insurance company. like it. Excuse me, if the insurance policy that people have covers it, then that is fine. If not, then I believe council should absorb the fee. But we are looking at the state government, that in the same amount of DAs that are lodged, and we have to pay out of general funds, state government long service levy, then I believe the long service levy should be absorbed by the state government. It cuts both ways. Now, the estimated cost of $10,000 a home for a DA application is $600,000. If we do not get some form of relief from the state government and federal government, the ratepayer will be subsidising. Simple as that. So it is, just be aware that if we do not continue to get some recognition in direct cash to this council, then the ratepayers, and as pointed out by council, he has estimated maybe this Shire has spent $3 million. That is being subsidised by you, the ratepayer. Now there is a lot of emotion and a lot, in my opinion, of beat up by some councillors and some members of the community who are trying. By some members who are trying to point that council is the bad guy. We are the closest to the community. We are the... Thank you very much. If you continue on, I will ask you to leave. Right? Please. The democracy is you give the a fair go, and that is the mayor has the right to speak. The comment is that I do not want the community to keep paying for these fires and the continuation for the next 2 years on the recovery. This is a national disaster. We need help from the federal and state government in direct contribution to council. Direct contribution to council, so we can put that on the ground for the community. And unless we get it, the ratepayer is going to be the one. Yeah, it'll come out of general fund, and the general fund will be next year's budget. And the next year's budget will take away a lot of the projects that we've got planned for the community. Now, no, excuse me, if you want to interject, please leave the chamber now. Otherwise, allow me to have my say. Because my concern is for the community, not for those who are interjecting. Please. And thank you. Your right of reply, Councillor Whipper.
If I could, I'm speaking to the amendment before your right of a reply. Mr Mayor, I've been listening, as I said, to the debate. Maybe 2 weeks to get some information back as to whether or not the insurance industry does cover DA fees would assist us. We're being told by the insurance industry that they will cover those DA fees. We've heard those statements. So, you know, we believe them or we don't. But what I'd like to say is how disappointed I am at the disrespect that's been shown in this chamber tonight. The cameras are gone. They've got everything they wanted. We don't perform like this for the cameras ordinarily. And I am totally embarrassed, Mr Mayor. This is so disrespectful to those people that are suffering in our Shire. I cannot begin to tell you, I work in an industry that deals with grief and anxiety and trauma all the time. This is just a cheap shot. What we're supposed to be doing, Mr Mayor, is working collectively together to work with the community to address their needs. This is a circus, and I am embarrassed to be a councillor at this point in time. And I'm asking councillors on that basis alone to take a breath, support the amendment, and let's look at this logically and rationally rather than hyped up on grandstanding and emotion.
Exactly.
I think it's really important that we do that, Mr Mayor, because the decision I make, I want it to be measured with my conscience.
Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper, and thank you for bringing a bit of sanity back into the debate. Councillor Turlett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, it was the article that started that you made a comment that the DA fees would only be for uninsured people that started the question that Councillor Housted put in the motion, which I thought was going to be dealt later, not in this particular part of the motion, because they really don't. They are separate. One's $1 million, one's how we're going to deal with the DA. So this is where this all started. I can see here from Wallandilly Council on their Facebook page that Wallandilly is prepared to waiver to assist residents who have been affected, and their fee they believe is around $470,000. Now, if you go to the fact sheet of what we're talking about, the DA fees for a house is about $2,155 that the council gets. The CC cost, construction tip, is about $2,200. The council section 68 fees and drainage fees, and that is about $1,000. And then you go to the last one, it's the long service leave, which is nearly one-third, $2,600. The government needs to step up and take the 2/6 off the table. Bang, done and dusted. We as a council can actually make the contribution, like Wallandilly, on these other fees. And as we heard today from our briefing sessions with the federal and the state chairman of the Local Government Association, is that go and do it and we will help you and make sure you get the money back. Now, I know that's hard to say, but I believe that those two, our representatives, will stand up for us and our community. They will help us get the money back from the state and the federal in relation to these issues. And so the issue about rate relief, you know, we're going to put this on the table that the state reimburses us all out of the $2 billion. They've only put out 60 million. It then comes back to us in some way. And it more than likely will come back with political and public push. That's what we need to do, is keep pushing the politicians. I mean, this is an Angus Taylor half section and Stephen Jones other section. They should be working together to make sure we look after our community, because we're split in half. Wendy Tuckerman and thank you Nathaniel have been working great, because we're split in half again. We have two voices. But the feds need to stand up, because that's where the money is. This is what we're dealing with, $1 million of the federal money. You know, this motion that's for in item 2, we were told on the 22nd, 7 days ago, that the potential money was going to come forward. What have we heard from the planning minister? Zip, nothing. Nothing. So I think with public pressure, we should be able to get the rate relief, but also the DA fees. But if it doesn't, as a ratepayer, I don't care. I'm happy to help and pay. Put a levy. Put a levy in the system. If that's what we have to do on the 12th of February, and $20.11 or $5, I don't care what the mathematics works out to over the next 2 years. I think we'd be very happy. Everybody in the street would be happy to do that as a ratepayer. I don't think there's a problem with that at all. I just think...
Thank you, Councillor.
What a shame.
No questions. We can't take questions from the back, I'm sorry. It is not part of protocol, council protocol. No, I know you can't, I'm sorry. I put the recommendation as the amendment as moved by Councillor Nelson. All in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Councillors Nelson, Andrews, Whipper, Markwart, McLaughlin and Gare. Those against? Councillors Scandrett, Turlett and Halstead. The amendment now becomes the motion. I put the motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. Councillors Nelson, Andrews, Whipper, Markwart, McLaughlin and Gare. I carry the motion carried and declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. The dissenting votes are recorded. Those against. Thank you. Thank you. Declare the meeting closed.
I think it's time class action needs to be taken here.
Well, there you go.
He hasn't done that. I know. Let him. It's an illegal meeting.